I love going to the movies. That's a shared experience. You're all in that dark room together. You all see the same thing, and then you all have a conversation about how you felt about it, what you think the themes were, what that meant, how you felt about X, Y, and Z. But a comic, everyone reads it differently. Everyone takes a different amount of time to, the way they analyze a page, the way they analyze a panel, the way it plays out with the motion in their head, the way they hear everything. It is a very unique and personal experience.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy,
I'm Alan.
and we want to welcome you back to GG Everybody, your ultimate pop culture podcast where we hit start on all things geek. From video games and comic books to tabletop RPGs, tech trends, and beyond, we're here to level up your fandom. Whether you're a console warrior, a dungeon master, or just someone who loves diving deep into geek culture, we've got something for you. Every episode, we tackle the biggest topics, hot takes, and hidden gems from across your favorite fandom, so grab your dice, charge your controllers, and get ready to geek out. Our guest today is someone that I've had the pleasure of meeting and getting to know better over the last couple of years. His name is Gregg Katzman. He's a senior publicity manager for IDW Entertainment. And Greg, I just wanted to thank you so much for taking some time to chat with us today.
Oh, I'm happy to. Thank you so much for the invite. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, I'm happy to chat with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, Greg, you and I kind of connected in covering comics, right? And kind of going to different conventions, WonderCon, Comic Con, and just kind of getting to know some of the creatives that are in the space of IDW, working on properties like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Jason Aaron just had a major relaunch of that over this past year. And there's lots of other really great properties at IDW I'm sure we'll come to talk about through the course of this episode. But what I wanted to start with was learning a little bit more about you and your background. So, how did did you start on this professional journey because you had this love for comics, or how did you kind of end up getting into the orbit that is doing publicity for a comic publisher like IDW?
Thank you. That's a great question. I guess it all goes back to my childhood. I was born in 1985, so I was born at the perfect time for Turtle Mania.
Heck yeah.
Yeah,
85 also. Yeah.
nice.
happy
Yes.
happy 40th yet? Or no? Mine's coming up.
August. I'm almost there. Almost there, man.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Turtles turned 40 before us though, since the comic debuted in '84. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I was a huge, huge Ninja Turtles fan as a kid. Between the '87 show, the arcade, the video games, the all the toys, the apparel, and everything, and that also encompassed, X-Men the animated series, Batman the animated series, Spider-Man the animated series. I fell in love with comic book characters and comic book culture, but it would be a while before I actually took a proper deep dive into comic books. I would read them here and there as a kid, but I was so distracted by like the video games and the shows and everything. It wasn't until around 2006, my senior year of college, where I really just went right into the deep end of comic book collecting and went all in. And I was in the news industry early in my career as a writer and a producer, and it wasn't really what I wanted from my life. I thought that's the direction I wanted to head in, but it was clear that just I enjoyed my time there, but my heart wasn't really in it. So I thought, how can I take all this experience, my strengths, what can I apply it to? And I was fortunate enough to go into the side of entertainment and comic book press. So I
Yeah.
spent over a decade just writing for different sites, whether it was like Comic Vine, IGN, CBR, Screen Rant, a bunch of others, just promoting the comics and the entertainment pop culture that I loved, doing interviews, doing reviews where if it was glowing or constructive criticism, I always tried my best to give everything a fair shot, and give a fair analysis of it. And I just had a lot of time as press, and eventually I was lucky enough to get a job at Midtown Comics doing
Mm.
their marketing and events. And from there, through that experience, I met someone who worked at Valiant, who would later poach me. They brought me in to talk about marketing over there, and I happily accepted, which was awesome because I wasn't a Valiant fan as a kid, but when they did their big reboot around 2011, I was
Right.
hooked because I thought those were some really good comics. So I was happy to do that. Um, but then eventually, IDW reached out to me, and as you know, they have the Ninja Turtles license among other awesome licenses and original comics. So I was happy to chat with them, and thankfully, it was a mutually beneficial fit, and I've been there almost 2 years now. Just and I think I never planned to get into publicity, but my experience as press and on the retail side, I think gives good perspective
Yeah.
about working with press and trying to set like realistic expectations and having to build positive relationships. Whether the person loves or loathes the comics, like that can't impact the relationship. It's gotta it's still it's just something that being press helped me really explore. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I never thought I'd be in publicity, but just all my experience led me to it, I guess.
Yeah. I love that journey because it gives me hope that there's a path forward, right? Like it sort of starts in this space. Like to your point, you started out, covering things for various websites, performing these reviews, kind of hyping up these different issues and properties and series that are out, these different creators, and to your point, equal parts, sort of, appreciation and also constructive criticism, like especially in an age where toxicity is so easy to find. Like it seems so much easier to just wake up and just choose to be negative about things, in the internet era, right? And so being able to offer that constructive feedback in a way that a creator could read it and be like, okay, you know what, that's fair, something to think about for next time, versus just like this sucks and I'm going to tell everybody to run for the hills or whatever. It's more like, well, like if you maybe if you like this sort of story, it might appeal to you more, but this is where I found it challenging, etc. So um rewinding just really quick, to like not really being really big into comics necessarily until later on. What were some of the series or maybe creators that really started to pique your interest when you began to get more into comics? I know you mentioned the Valiant relaunch in 2011, but were there other moments kind of before that where you were like, oh man, like there's something to this whole comic stuff?
Yeah, I mean, very early on when I was a kid, some of the initial comics that really hooked me and allowed me to see what makes the medium, so different from watching a show or anything like that. How you could spend your time with each panel, but it doesn't feel static. Is some of the Marvel Comics Presents issues around the late '70s, early '80s for the numbers. It was a story arc with a lesser known Wolverine villain named Cyber that made me fall in love with it. Also, Gambit's first limited series as a kid, but I was oblivious to who was actually making the comics back then. I was
Right.
just
Yeah.
it was kind of like watching the animated show as a kid. You probably didn't know who was directing that episode or writing it or producing it or maybe even who the voice actors were back then. Yeah, I certainly didn't when I was that young. But then when I really, really took a deep dive, I mean, I'd say J. Mateus and Mike Zeck from Craven's Last Hunt. That was just such a unique reading experience for me that just was so compelling and just unlike anything I've experienced and totally changed my perspective on not only the character of Craven, but also what a Spider Man story could offer, and how it could surprise me and how it could fully embrace the medium, even when it came to just like how the lettering was utilized. It was really
Right.
inventive. And then I mean, Scott Snyder was a writer as well because Black Mirror, I read that pretty early on, and that was another one where I was just blown away by that. So it was nice to see very shortly after that him go on to just reach new heights with Greg Capullo. with the New 52 run, and then again with Absolute Batman with Nick Dragotta. That's wild that he is just if you find any like must read Batman list, Scott's probably going to be
Yeah,
there.
Scott's gonna have like three, like two or three, like the biggest runs on that list. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then of course I would be a fool not to say Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. I mean, once I got back into comics or got truly into comics, I of course wanted to then re-explore my love for Ninja Turtles, and I went back and picked up some of the Mirage stuff, which was easier to collect at the time, and just that first issue, of course, that was just an amazing reading experience because as a product of Turtle Mania, even though I loved the 1990 movie, I never truly expected the comic to be like that, and then it just switches up so fast in terms of tone too. Like the Mirage Turtles aren't just gritty and Shredder dies in the first issue, and but then how many issues later until they're in space fighting triceratons and everything. It's a
Yeah,
lot of fun.
yeah. Um, I know that you've been with IDW for a couple of years, but obviously you've been doing like publicity kind of in the comic space a bit longer and been plugged into pop culture more generally, obviously longer than that, right? Since you've kind of gotten back into comics and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
What what have been some of your maybe like reflections on how like the broader audience is engaging, maybe more specifically with IDW titles, right? Because you're kind of closer to them. But how are you seeing that kind of the evolution of how people are engaging with comic books in the year of our Lord 2025? Right? Is it really a push towards digital? Are we seeing more of like a rejection of more digital actually, and people really like the analog experience? Like um, I'm just kind of curious, when folks are kind of sitting around thinking, okay, how are we going to strategize for this next big IP launch that we have? What does that look like? Are we doing a digital forward kind of strategy? Are we sticking to more traditional outlets and traditional structures? I'm just curious if you've seen any sort of evolution when it comes to like how that marketing looks and how the actual rollout of those books look like.
Sure, that's a really good question, and I'd say it's definitely a case by case basis. I think the option of digital is always going to exist because accessibility is important. Whether someone reads their first comic on their tablet, on their phone, on any other kind of screen, or via their local retailer in person, whatever gives people the means to read comics, to fall in love with that experience, that's very important, and you want comics to be accessible. But I'd argue that at the end of the day, comic book retailers really are the backbone of the industry. So for the traditional market, so to speak, your direct market releases, things that are releasing as single issues, it is vital to do what you can to ensure that we're doing everything in our power to get audiences to and readers to their local comic shop to pick up these comics and give them a shot. And we're giving retailers the means to, hopefully, get a look at these comics in advance so they know how they can talk to their customers about it, whether or not they believe in the comic and want to support it and go to bat for it and sell it. Or maybe they're not feeling it and they want to have that honest relationship with their customers. I mean, I have a very honest relationship with my local comic shop. When I'm on the fence about something, he'll give me his honest feedback, and it's never like mean spirited or overly negative. It's always thoughtful. Um, I always really appreciate that because that's how you could tell the person really loves comics. They're not looking to tear it down. They're not looking to burn the industry or whatever. They care about it and they want to see things constantly improve, and they want to see comics that they feel excited about, and things that maybe miss the mark or feel more formulaic, they'll let me know, like, hey, maybe like save your 4.99 on this one but give this a shot instead because of X, Y, and Z. um, it also depends a lot on the audience. Every comic is going to be wildly different. Kind of goes back to the question of like, if you have a friend and you want to get them into comics, I'd argue you can't give a generic list of 3 collections to the same person every single
Yeah,
time. You can't be like
yeah.
Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, Daredevil, Born Again for every single person. You know,
Why not? Just
yeah,
kidding.
there
That's a
might be,
fine list.
yeah, no, but those are examples of like incredible, influential pieces of art in our industry. But that might not be for everyone. That might not be the kind of entertainment everyone is looking for. There may be someone who wants something that's more of like popcorn entertainment with a little bit of mystery. So maybe maybe Hush would be the kind of thing that like pulls them into comics, it gets them hooked, and then one day allows them to explore other things. So I think a lot depends on, what is the title, who is the primary audience for that title. Is that primary audience already an audience that is familiar with the direct market? Do they already know about how pre-ordering with their comic shop? Or is this an audience that maybe, it would be a better fit if they go to digital and then the book trade market, where it's easier for them to collect. So it truly is a case by case basis because everyone's different. And at IDW, we have an incredibly diverse array of releases, whether it's Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, or Sonic the Hedgehog, or Jason Aaron Wamfreyer's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Eric Burnham and Sarah Meyer and Dan Schoening and Luis Antonio Delgado's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Saturday Morning Adventures. And then there's also a variety of Star Trek books, whether it's Lower Decks or Lore War. Um, and then Godzilla. Even Godzilla is a good example. The Kaisei era is kicking
Yeah.
off. It is this ambitious shared Godzilla universe. But even within that, there's 3 titles that are wildly different and can appeal to completely different readers. So I think digital is always going to be here to stay. But unless there are drastic changes and giant plot twists, I don't foresee that overtaking the direct market, at least not anytime soon. I think every publisher out there wants to do what they can to support the direct market and allow retail shops to thrive. Because those are vital for our industry. We want to lift up great shops and encourage them because those are destinations. I love going to my local comic shop every week. I love being
Right.
able to listen to what other people are saying and have honest conversations with my local retailer and the people in there. Like, it's a spot to meet like-minded people, at least when it comes to general interest in the medium, and then have friendly and fun conversations about what you're liking, maybe what you're not liking. So accessibility is important. It's very, very important because, I mean, almost everyone has, a smartphone. Almost everyone is at their laptop a lot. And if you give people the means to read a comic that way, that's incredible. And if that
Yeah.
makes them fall in love with comics and want to further pursue it, that's even better. But I think there will always be a push for the direct market and ways to hopefully, help it find new ways to thrive, find new ways to bring in people, and find new ways to kind of capitalize on the way comic book characters have taken over pop culture. Because I mean, like, how many people watched the Avengers Doomsday actors chair lineup stream? Like,
Right. Yeah.
how do we get even like 2% of those people to pick up a comic for the first time?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that's a really interesting thing too. And Alan, I'm gonna try and loop you in on this one because I know you're not really a comics guy, right, Alan? Like you don't really follow comics very closely.
Yeah, I don't really follow. Like, I follow our Geekly Grind social media account, and I enjoy like when you post pictures of stuff that you're reading. It looks really
Mhm.
interesting, and like I enjoy a lot of the comic book movies. But yeah, I'm not necessarily like plugged in and have any series that I'm reading or anything like that.
Yeah.
So can I actually hop in here, take over the
Yeah. Yeah.
interview for a second? Okay.
Yes,
So Alan,
please.
what is a comic book movie that you absolutely loved?
I would probably have to say just the Avengers series in general, like the whole set of movies and how they
Okay.
told the story, like each
Mhm.
part of the story in each movie.
Awesome. And now, if you don't mind me asking, and there's no judgment here whatsoever. I'm actually seeing if there's a way I can help here. Um, so you've loved these Avengers movies. You've enjoyed the characters. You've enjoyed these stories and the way they've changed and the way these characters have evolved. And then when you left the theater, clearly there was like no real desire for you to then further explore these stories and characters in the pages of a comic. And if you don't mind me asking, what is, in your opinion, the primary hurdle there? Is it the concept of like where do you start? Where do you even buy comics? Or just a lack of interest that you feel satisfied with the movie experience and you're good?
I'm satisfied with the experience, but also just time. Like I have so
Mhm.
many other hobbies and stuff that I'm into. It's just hard to find time to like get into comic book reading because I'm into video games, anime, movies in general, outside of comic book hero movies, and also reading books. So it's like just juggling, trying to juggle everything and fit stuff in. So
That is totally fair. How about this? After we're done recording, would you be comfortable providing your mailing address or a PO box, and I will mail you one comic that I think you may be interested in? No pressure as to how soon you need to read it. Just sometime in your life, give it a shot, and then let me know what you felt about it and whether or not you're interested in reading more. I would love to do that if you're open to it.
yeah, sure.
Cool, and it'll obviously, I know I work for IDW, but I'll obviously make it an Avengers thing. Was there a specific character that you liked the most?
There wasn't anyone that I would say like is my favorite. I kind of like them all.
Okay.
All right. So we have ourselves a little not necessarily a challenge, but just a pathway, a doorway we're trying to open here, and I appreciate that kind of continuing conversation. And I think it's a good one to reflect on because it is interesting. You brought up the Doomsday, the Avengers Doomsday kind of stream, and all of the fervor and excitement that comes from the movie medium, right? That comes from the
Mhm.
MCU and the world that's kind of sprung up around it. And to your point, like if a fraction of those people went to their LCS and bought a book, right? Like that LCS would probably be funded for the next year or two, right? Like just like that weekend. Um, and and so I think really kind of digging into that disconnect and learning more about that, right? Like in these, kind of informal surveys, in these questions, right? That's sort of the work I would imagine somebody like yourself would do, right, to learn more. And maybe that's more of the marketing team, right? But that seems to be a key to unlock. Okay, how do we get to to this broader audience, which is more engaged with the film medium maybe than they are with comics, and how do we bring more of those people to the stand, to the racks, basically?
Yeah, something like that is definitely above my pay grade, but IDW is also incredibly collaborative environment. My boss is no stranger to just getting messages that are just spitball ideas for me all the time. And obviously, we work very, very closely with Paramount. They're amazing partners. They have a Last Ronin movie on the way, which they've announced. They also
Yeah,
have a Mutant Mayhem sequel on the way, which they've announced. And I've already bugged people internally with some ideas, which obviously, are not for me to share publicly, but they're, we're always looking for ways to collaborate. And I think a good example, which I can share, is like when I was at Valiant, I was there when Sony released the Bloodshot movie. And prior to that, we had conversations with Sony, and we were able to work to make sure, everyone who attended the press junket, they got a gift bag, which included, a trade paperback that we released called Bloodshot. I forget exactly what the collection was called, but it was meant to be an easy jumping on point for anyone. And then also a special edition of the new Bloodshot #1, which recently released. And then on top of that, we had someone on the red carpet with comics to get, talent to take pictures holding the comics and everything. So we certainly back then tried to take some small steps to try to, increase the collaboration between, this is a comic book movie, and if you're
yeah.
interested,
And here's the
here's
comic book that
yeah.
that bore the movie out, right? Here's the connection to that.
Yeah, and I think Last Ronin, that's been a perennial bestseller, that hardcover. So I think when that movie
Yeah,
comes out, there's a tremendous opportunity to, you know, point people to, a single jumping on point, and then from there, include ads for, if you love that, here's where you go next.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I continue to be fascinated with The Last Ronin for so many reasons.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, TMNT as an IP and as a franchise obviously has legs. Obviously,
Mhm.
like it's kind of maintained its status within the millennial experience and kind of carried that forward right into Gen Z, as their parents are like, hey, like check this out, and like the classic cartoons and that sort of thing. And then of course, the long running series that the IDW had going
Mhm.
in the comic format, etc. So like obviously that all was like very kind of kept it alive and kept it going. But by and large, you would just think like, oh, okay, like yeah, it's going, and it's kind of this continued pillar in pop culture, and that's interesting. But whatever. And then Last Ronin comes out,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden, like this is the book that everybody gets at Christmas. This is the book that people are getting. People who are like, I kind of want to get into comics, but I don't know. Do you like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Oh yeah, I heard of them before. Here, read this book, right? And so, it just turned into such a huge, event, really, that I was completely caught off guard on it. I mean, I guess not completely, but I was really surprised with how big that book got, and continues to be. Um, and so, yeah, the movie, and then they're also working on a game, right?
Mhm.
There's like a
Yes.
video game that's being rumored about. So yeah, I mean that that book has gotten a life of its own for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, all right, well, thank you for sharing a bit of your background there and the stuff that you do for IDW and the great franchises that IDW has. Obviously, a big part of getting folks interested in comics is getting books in their hands, and one of the best ways to do that is through Free Comic Book Day. And so, for those who are unfamiliar, uh, typically it's usually around Star Wars Day. It's usually around May the 4th. There is a free comic book day where local comic shops and retailers all participate in kind of getting these promotional titles that are put out, and they're just that they're free, and so you can go to your local comic shop and you can pick up a handful of books up to however many you want. It depends on your LCS. I went over to Now or Never in downtown San Diego.
I saw
Fantastic
you in the
comic
social
shop.
pictures. They
Yeah,
posted
yeah.
pictures. Yeah, I saw you guys.
Yeah. So we had a great time down in Iron Never, and they let you take one of everything.
Mm.
So that was really great to just like go upstairs and just kind of like go through the table and walk out with like 40 books. And I'm like, sweet. Um, and I brought it home and I had like the stack of comics, and my wife was like, those were all free. I'm like, yep, I didn't pay anything for them. And so you get that opportunity, you get to check out all those books, and I was super excited for quite a few of the titles that were on display yesterday. But I guess I'll kick it over to you, Greg. Obviously, you have the titles that you're excited for because IDW is putting them out. But was there anything else on the FCBD roster that kind of stood out to you or that you picked up, had a chance to flip through?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we at IDW we released a preview of Godzilla: The Kaisei Era, which is a preview of the first three books in that connected universe, as well as IDW Dark, which is our horror imprint, and that included a first look at the sequel to Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. In case people are unfamiliar with that property, it was a cozy horror hit from 2024. It earned two Eisner nominations. Screen Rant also called it I think they called it like the biggest indie success story of the year. Um, the premise that I've heard the most from people is Dexter meets Animal Crossing, basically. So it was a first look at a sequel to that, plus a highly anticipated sequel to 30 Days of Night. I'm very excited that people got their hands on both of those, and it's just a kind of a preview of what's to come. But across the industry, I haven't read it yet, but I'm very curious about DC's All In Free Comic Book Day issue. I
Uh
think
huh.
they have been firing on all cylinders creatively over there. I'm very excited to see what they're cooking up, and stuff like Absolute Batman. That's appointment reading for me. That's always at the top of my pull list when it comes to stuff I'm getting from other publishers. That and Ultimate Spider-Man, of course. And then Marvel had a few. I'm curious about those as well. I think Skybound also did something about the Energon universe. Curious about that. But the
Yeah.
ones not from IDW that I'm genuinely looking forward to the most, would be from Dark Horse, Young Jedi Adventures, and from Marvel, Spidey and His Amazing Friends, because my son is 4 years old and he already has his own comic book collection. And
I love it.
he just gets so happy whenever he sees me bring home a new comic for him that's age appropriate. And he just wants to read it right away and then read it again for bed with me. And that just brings me so much joy. And so those are the two that outside of IDW's releases, I'm looking forward to reading the most.
Did you pick up the Mega Man Free Comic Book Day issue?
I'm embarrassed to say Mega Man is a property that has just never been in my world. I mean, like, I had friends who loved it, but the problem is
Man.
I didn't have the SNES. I had the Genesis growing up. So I think that's why I missed
Oh,
out.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
That hurts me. Well, I mean, it's not too late. You could still pick it up. I mean, the Mega Man comics, the Archie comics were fantastic, and it's really cool because they're actually going to be reprinting those.
Nice.
So they're going to be doing the Mega Man timelines starting this week, actually, I think. So every month they're going to do a timelines issue for like the various properties, so Mega Man X, Mega Man ZX, etc.
That's cool.
And then they're also going to be re-releasing the classic Mega Man Archie in like a bound like hardcover, and adding some bonus stories in it as well. And so the Free Comic Book Day issue that came out, really good. And of course, it's family friendly. It's good for the kids. So you can help to rectify the lack of Mega Man familiarity, and then you can instill that in your son instead. Make you so happy. So yeah, got the Kaisei era from IDW. I gotta say, and it's not just because you're on the show. I am so excited for all the Godzilla books. All of the Godzilla books look absolutely amazing. The Starship Godzilla is sort of like this crazy like outlaw star meets Godzilla sci-fi space adventure. And then there's also sort of like a survivalist kind of dystopian sci-fi take on it with Deadlands, Godzilla Deadlands, and then Godzilla 1, like the actual Godzilla line, actually reminds me of Alan. Are you familiar with Kaiju number 8? Like in the manga
I've
or the
heard of
anime?
it. It's on my to watch list on Crunchyroll, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay. So definitely check it out. Basically, like this new Godzilla story reminds me a lot of Kaiju number 8 because you basically have these like team of like super powered individuals that they're like getting together to be able to like fight against Godzilla and other kaiju. And so that's basically what Kaiju number 8 is. Like there's this world of kaiju and they have like super soldiers that they recruit to take on kaiju powers to fight each other. So yeah, I got really big sort of like manga vibes out of that, which I think is unsurprising because it's like it's Godzilla and it kind of has that same kind of energy. But yeah, I mean the Godzilla properties all look amazing, and then I did just finish the review or the preview copy for Ride of Spring yesterday. And I'm going to read it again probably later today because it's really good. I'll have my full thoughts up in a few days when I'm allowed to share them in full. But yeah, if you enjoyed Beneath the Trees, or if you're curious about the property, the trade's out from the original series. It was, I think it was my series of the year in 2024. And yeah, it's just fantastic. We've had a chance to chat with Patrick Horvath in the past as well on Comic Book Keepers, which is an affiliated pod. And I mean, it's just so delightfully twisted and just more of that amazing world and writing and art style from Patrick. It's just so good. So
Thank you. Yeah, it really speaks volumes about just like the creators that IDW works with and the editors who are, supporting them and encouraging their creativity and contributing to that creativity and championing those books. I mean, at the end of the day, I can, throw as many comics as possible at press and get them to talk with the creators and give them early access and all that. But once someone reads the comic, their opinion is made up. It doesn't matter how much hype went into it beforehand. That The story itself is what's going to determine whether or not they come back for the next story. And I think, people like Patrick Horvath, um, with Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, and the Kaisei era across the board. The editor on the Godzilla line, Jake Williams, is super passionate about developing that and just finding killer creative teams for, like you said, Godzilla, which has this kind of like embraces more like superhero and manga tropes while also having a totally new mythology for Godzilla and a new design, or Escape the Dead Zone, which is post-apocalyptic and more character-driven, or Starship Godzilla, like you said, which is this wild cosmic adventure. I think Jake himself kind of described it as like a Guardians of the Galaxy going through space and Mecha Godzilla. So I'm glad you're enjoying them, and everyone's really, pouring a ton of creativity and passion into all these books across the board. And that also holds true like across the whole line. I'm lucky to be there. I see that with the Ninja Turtles line, with the Sonic line, with the Star Trek line, with the Monster High line, and then there's also stuff coming up that hasn't even been announced yet or revealed. We have more. There's at least one more license that should be revealed in the near future, I'll say.
Oh, okay. A little tease. Well, I'll look forward to that. And yeah, Sonic as well. I mean, I really enjoyed the Sonic and DC crossover. That's going on. That's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've actually been very pleased with like the TMNT and Naruto crossover. Like a lot of those crossover series that are just uh I don't even want to say dumb fun because I don't think that's fair. Like I think it's just like
Yeah,
popcorn
popcorn
popping sort of
entertainment.
like
Yeah,
entertainment adventure
yeah.
series, right? Like I love those, and they've really been hitting like really well
Dude,
lately.
there's no shame in that. I mean, like one of my most popular segments when I was writing for Comic Vine was best battles in new comics, where I realized like I love talking about that stuff. It's fun for me thinking about how these characters interact. What would happen if they would fight? Not like I'm rooting for one or whatever. I'm just curious about like keeping an open mind and having fun with the possibilities. And I think crossovers are just a blast. There's a reason why people want to see them, and we we definitely have. I can't really give details, but there are more crossovers in the future with IDW, and I'm
Yeah.
excited for the word to eventually get out on what those will be.
Well, look forward to those announcements with
Yeah.
anticipation. But in the meantime, Free
Mhm.
Comic Book Day, a big part of that event really was kind of sponsored by Diamond Distribution, right? Diamond Comic Distribution, and I know we talked about this a little bit when we had Eamon Winkle on a number of weeks ago. Diamond is going through a rough time at the moment. So we've got, essentially they filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy a number of months ago, and just recently it changed from a Chapter 11, which is more like reorganization of the company, to Chapter 7, which is liquidation, which doesn't sound good. So, there's been some chatter about maybe Universal stepping in to buy, et cetera. But I'm curious, like, from your perspective, Greg, like, how, because Diamond's been a major player, obviously, and I know Penguin came in and they're working on
Mhm.
some distribution stuff, et cetera. But like, how has this been impacting maybe IDW's strategy and approach and distribution? Like, were they using Diamond at all previously, and they've moved to another vendor? Like, how are you seeing that play out from where you stand in the industry right now?
Sure. I mean, you mentioned Penguin Random House. We work very very closely with them. We have regular meetings with them, regular discussions. It's a very collaborative, very constructive, very positive relationship. I mean, even today, I was giving them an update on all of our plans to promote, the lead up to the pre-order deadline for Godzilla #1 and all the publicity we're pushing into that, and they then utilize that in their communication with retailers across the country to let them know, like, here's why you should order with confidence, here's why you should be excited about, and here's everything IDW is doing to make sure you are not alone in this. You do not need to do the heavy lifting when it comes to getting the word out here. They're doing everything in their power to try to get people in the door. And then where you guys go from there is of course up to you as a local retailer. And yeah, there's of course a relationship with Diamond as well. And what I can say to that is, as deeply as I care about, the honest and fair relationship with press because of my experience as press, IDW thankfully has a leadership who feel the exact same way about the bigger picture when it comes to operations, sales distribution, uh, business partners, stuff of that nature, which is all well above my pay grade. But our executives are regularly, keeping an eye on everything, regularly having meetings, regularly discussing multiple strategies, which could allow for, any kind of variable that comes our way to ensure that, IDW continues to head on the right track and continues to grow and head in a positive direction instead of being surprised by any setbacks or being, no one is just resting easy, so to speak, when it comes to their job. And by that I don't mean there's like a fear of losing jobs or whatever. I mean, no one is lazy when it comes to what they do at IDW. No one is saying, yeah, we could just, rinse and repeat, right? Like I can't promote or announce the same book. I can't promote and announce two wildly different books the exact same way.
The same way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the
Can't
strategy that
copy paste the press release. Yeah.
exactly everything that goes into the strategy that I'm doing for every kind of book and how we're announcing and how we're celebrating the creators. We have multiple people in our leadership and director levels within the company who have been on top of this for a long time now and continue to take steps to, not only prepare for any kind of plot twist that could arrive, but also to just continue to thrive, thankfully. And it allows people like me in the company to feel more comfortable and then to really focus on my job and do my job to the best of my ability, because I know that the people at the top care about everyone who works here, but also care about making sure IDW remains a leader in the industry and remains one of the biggest publishers out there. So
Yeah.
while there are constant changes and the future of Diamond is obviously, you know, from my perspective, it's unclear what the future holds as to who
Hmm.
could step in or anything like that. I do have confidence in knowing that, our CEO, our CCO, our VP of marketing, our head sales guy, our business team, all of those people are infinitely smarter than I will ever be when it comes to that side of the industry. So
On
I'm
certain things. On
yeah.
certain things. Yeah.
So when it comes to that side of the industry, I am
Yeah.
happy to defer to their expertise and know that we are in good hands. And they've been transparent with the team the whole way too, when it comes to every kind of like public facing update that has occurred. They want to make sure we're never, blindsided by like, wait, what's going on with Diamond now? They are very clear in their communication, very transparent,
Yeah.
and have kept us feeling optimistic, thankfully. And I'm thankfully not worried.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like if the leadership wasn't being proactive in that way, like is would the practical impact basically just be like not being able to get your books essentially to like the retails and to where you need to go, right? Like if people haven't been seeing the writing on the wall, which would be very, at this point would be very difficult to believe, but like, to your point, if folks weren't forward looking, right, like looking for those risks, like looking around the corner, they could find themselves being like, oh, like we were going to work with Diamond, but now they can't guarantee that they're going to be able to actually like get our books from um, basically from print to where we need them to go. Like that's kind of the step that Diamond is taking in that workflow, right? Like they kind of take it from you have these books that are ready to go, and then getting them to the retailers, the LCSs, etc.
Yeah, I imagine if there was a publisher out there that wasn't, you know, uh, keeping an eye on things, wasn't being proactive, wasn't strategic, then yeah, they could definitely encounter some, potential distribution issues. I would
Yeah.
imagine. I've certainly, I won't name publishers obviously, but I've certainly had two or three books on my pull list where my LCS maybe gets it a week or two late usually, sometimes maybe
Mm-hmm.
not more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been a bit of As a fan, that's been a little disappointing, having
Yeah.
delays with some of my
It's like
comic
when you
books.
order a new video game, right? And you want it to arrive on your door
Mhm.
on the day it comes out, and it's like 2 days late, 3 days late. You're just like you feel like you're just missing out, You hate that. Um, well, before we're gonna chat a little bit about the Thunderbolts movie, and then we'll talk a bit about the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-order madness. But before we kind of move away from comics, we talked about it a little bit before, and we've had this conversation with other guests in the past as well. Like pre-ordering
Mhm.
is an interesting mechanic in the world of like, you know, hobbies in general, right? And in the spaces that, in the space that, Alan and I both kind of inhabit in terms of like video games, like really big in video games, pre-ordering a video game has carried kind of a stigma in recent years in that, you don't necessarily want to just like, shell out your $60 for like a digital pre-order for a game, without having the final product, right? Because then the game arrives and it has like a day one patch or there's a bunch of stuff broken and basically the argument is like you're basically rewarding bad behavior, right? When you give these big companies your money ahead of time and then they ship you an incomplete product, when you give them the pre-order money, you're still basically saying like that's fine, as opposed to like waiting until release, waiting to see what people say about it and then
Mhm.
spending the money. But and this is just for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with the comic space or want to get more into the comic hobby, like pre-orders are like the lifeblood, if I'm understanding right, of comic, kind of distribution and purchasing, because it really does provide that pulse on who is going to show up and buy these books. Would you agree?
Yes, I do agree. Pre-ordering is essential for the comic book industry when it comes to the direct market. And I hear you loud and clear about the video game industry. I'm someone who grew up with games like PC games like Half-Life, where the expansion pack you buy there is a full separate game. It's not just getting some new skins or new weapons or whatever. But
Right, right.
change is constant. Thankfully, when it comes to the comic book industry, it's very, very different. Putting $60 down or 70 or even 80 for a video game that early without knowing what the reviews are going to be like, whether that game is going to be truly completed, whether you're going to need to purchase more afterwards. That's that's a pretty big risk for a lot of people financially. That's a big financial investment. Whereas pre-ordering a comic book, when you know who the writer is, who the artist is, you see the covers, you hear about the story, covers come out, you get interior page samples, you know that at the end of the day, the comic that you're getting, number one, it's a much lower financial risk. It's traditionally going to be anywhere between $3.99 to $5.99 for that one comic, which
Right.
not to say that that's easy money for anyone to just put out there, obviously. um,
But it is
Find
it
that
is a lower threshold, right? Like it is a
it is.
lower overall risk. Like if you go
Yeah,
if you walk up to a blackjack table, right? Like putting down $5 on a hand is a lot more appetizing than putting down like 60 or $80 on a
sure.
hand, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same rate, I do understand that, like, being a comic fan means every Wednesday, you're picking up a lot of comics and you're potentially spending a lot of money and determining whether or not something is worth the additional $4 to $6. That's fair. I've had that situation many times where I, look at how many comics I'm picking up and I go, man, do I really need this extra one? Um, so I get it, but yeah, what you're going to get the complete comic when you do pick it up. It's not like you're going to need to pay extra to get a patch for the comic or anything like that.
Yeah.
Once you get that
Yeah.
comic, then you can determine: do you want to keep this book on your pull list? Did you like it? Do you want to do the same thing next month? Or hey, do you want to tell your retailer, I'm sorry, man, I wasn't really feeling this. Can we take it off? So it's very different. But yes, pre-orders, those numbers are essential because it also tells the publisher how much demand there is for a comic, which then allows them to make strategic decisions as to, hey, maybe this started as a limited series, but whoa, there's way more demand than we expected. Maybe
Mhm.
this can be extended. Maybe this now warrants a sequel. Or on the flip side, maybe we all really believe in something and go to bat for something, but then it doesn't meet expectations. And then, okay, we'll let that, run its course. And maybe, it doesn't have a sequel or a follow up or expands into, getting its own spin offs and everything.
Right.
It allows the publisher to make informed choices, just like a studio would with box office. At the end of the day, they can feel passionately about a movie and love a movie that they put out and be proud of it and stand behind it. But if people don't show up, if people don't buy tickets, that sends a clear message regarding whether or not this makes sense as a business to do. And it's the unfortunate truth about the ongoing situation between creative and profit, right? You need
Yeah.
to find a balance of both. You need to find creative that is satisfying and champions the creators and gives them the freedom to do what they want to do and tell the stories that only they can tell, but also give us the means to make sure that it can reach a good amount of people. And also speaking to pre-ordering comics, I also view it kind of like almost like you would buying a movie ticket nowadays, where you need to, from in most cases now it seems, you need to buy a movie ticket to guarantee a good seat. Otherwise, you may not be able to see it opening weekend. It may
Hmm.
be sold out.
Yeah.
And the same holds true for pre-ordering a comic. If you don't pre-order in your local comic shop, they may not order enough copies for you to get it.
Yeah. And it's that FOMO that drives, like recently there was a Wolverine issue, right? That Daniel Warren Johnson did the cover
Yeah.
for and also did a short story on the inside. And that thing took off. Like it was Legacy, I think issue 200. So that also was kind of driving some of it. But like, you'll see, that kind of demand come
Mhm.
out of nowhere because somebody will do a feature on it or somebody will see the cover and be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then you'll go to your comic shop, nowhere to be found, like nowhere to be found in the tri-state area, and then you'll have to go onto eBay and spend $50 on a $6 MSRP book. So and sometimes it's hard to tell what books will do that, right? And so that's why it's good to be pre-ordering. It's good to have your pull list. It's good to know like what creators you like. Some people have polls like by writer or by artist. Like, hey, if
Mhm.
anything by Dragotta, I want it. Anything by
Yeah.
Hickman, I want it, right? Because you never know when it's gonna hit, and you want to read it, and you want to be part of that conversation. So
So I was
Yeah.
wondering, if a publisher sees that, like for that Wolverine example you gave, like they wouldn't do like another print run to like because they know demand's out there.
well, yeah, so they would do another print run, but now the first print is in high demand, right? Now the first print becomes a more of a collector's item
Mhm.
and kind of maintains that. And they will likely make changes to the cover for a second print, right? So they might go to a straight black and white cover, they might slightly change, they might do things to the book to make it more apparent that it's a second print run, right? And so um that's historically what happens. And so then people are still kind of going back and being like, no, I want that first print A cover, right? Like the
Mhm.
primary cover, because the variant covers you see are like A, B, C, and they kind of go through the alphabet. And depending on how big the property is, right? Like Absolute Batman #1 had, God, I don't know how many covers
Mhm.
on it, right? Variant covers. Um, but yeah, so if you see that demand, that's why. And you can still go and you can still get that book, right? So if you hear a lot of great things about
Mhm.
Wolverine, that Wolverine issue, and they do a second print, you can go to your LCS and be like, hey, like next time that book comes in, like I want that one in my pull. I want to read it. I want to see these stories. But there's a chance that you're missing the boat. And then there's also a possibility that they won't do another print. They'll just wait until they do a collected edition, right? Because if they do a limited run of 4 to 6 issues, they won't necessarily put issue 1 out again. They'll just be like, okay, cool. Like when you're ready to read the story, we'll put it in this collected edition. And then you might really have to go looking for that issue. But I don't know, Greg, anything else to add to that? That's kind of been my experience, like as a collector, kind of outside looking in.
Yeah, yeah, no. Traditionally, the pre-order deadline or FOC final order cutoff is when publishers hear how many copies were ordered across the board, and from there they can determine does this warrant a second printing? Because it's funny when when we all announce there's a book going to second printing, some people may assume that means it completely sold out, as in there are no more copies available to purchase. But what it actually means, all of the copies that were created have been ordered. So all of the copies that, or at least a vast majority, like there are barely any left, have been ordered and are out in the world. They're in comic shops and everything. They're on online retailers, stuff like that. So now it's saying, okay, if people need to order more, which is a possibility, we should do a second printing, because that shows that there's demand for it. I think Beneath the Trees, Where Nobody Sees, is a good example of that. That's a book where everyone at IDW fully stood behind that book, and they even internally were like, yeah, we're going to do more than one of these. This is so good, and there's so much more room for this. But I think sales expectations were very moderate, because as brilliant as Patrick Horvath may be, as striking as that cover may be, as amazing as the comic may be, um, he's someone who came from film, didn't have respectfully, a big following within the comic book industry. It's a brand new property, so that built-in audience was not something that most people would view as like significant or whatever, which is why everyone believed in the comic and thought it was awesome, but the expectations were moderate. And obviously, thankfully, everyone felt the same way regarding the quality of the book and Patrick's just amazing talents as a storyteller. So we saw increases with every issue, which is not common in the industry. Usually, the increases for number one are the highest they're going to be, and then they go down from there and level out around issues like 3 or 4 traditionally. In this case, they kept going up, because not only did everyone do our best to promote it, but then once people got their hands on it, word of mouth just was through the roof. Everyone fell in love with the book. Everyone was promoting the book. Everyone was recommending the book. So that's when, we had a second print and a third print and a second print of the second issue, and so on and so on, to meet the increased demand, because we knew that, looking at eBay or whatever, just the amount that people were selling the issues for was astronomical. And we're like, that's really cool for those people, but we're also in the business of storytelling and wanting people to have access to those stories. And we also don't want them to have to wait, like 6 months for the collected edition or whatever. So that's why the company went forward and created multiple printings for the consecutive issues.
Yeah. So that's just kind of the usual approach there. And Stray Dogs was another one like that really caught fire from Tony Fleece. And we chatted with him about that one a bit too when we were
that's
talking
a great
about.
One, yeah.
Yeah. So like
Farrell's good too.
Which one?
Farrell, as well as Uncanny.
Oh yeah, Farrell's been a lot of fun also.
Yeah.
Kind of follow up on that. But anyways, so all of that to say, comics are awesome. If you want to get into comics, go to your LCS, have a conversation with folks that are there. Let them know what you're interested in. They can give you some recommendations. I know we do our best to be spotlighting the new books that are coming out. David Pepose' Space Ghost, I'm a huge fan of. I've been talking about. He's got Captain Planet coming out. Obviously, IDW's got a lot of really great stuff going on with Godzilla, with Beneath the Trees, with TMNT. So there's a lot of great books to read out there.
Yeah. And I would also recommend, if someone doesn't know where their local comic shop is, check out a website called comicshoplocator.com, and that will help guide you to a comic shop that's near you. And if there isn't a comic shop near you, there are so many options for like purchasing online. I don't even want to name drop specific places, because then I feel like I'm like leaving some options out, but there are so many online comic book stores where they will mail you your comics. And if that's not practical due to shipping, which I totally get, shipping costs, you can also get digital comics. IDW has an app where you can buy any of our releases same day as they release and read it that way. And there are other digital readers as well. So please give comics a shot. It's just an incredible medium that really gives you a storytelling experience that is so unique and personal, because I love going to the movies. That's a shared experience. You're all in that dark room together. You all see the same thing, and then you all have a conversation about how you felt about it, what you think the themes were. what that meant, what how you felt about X, Y, and Z. But a comic, everyone reads it differently. Everyone takes a different amount of time to, the way they analyze a page, the way they analyze a panel, the way it plays out with the motion in their head, the way they hear everything. It is a very unique and personal experience, and it's just full of it has a community that is just full of people who just care deeply about it and want to have fun and passionate and friendly conversations. So and if you ever need a comic reading recommendation, always feel free to reach out. I won't shamelessly only make it IDW. If you tell me Batman, I'll give you like a Batman reading recommendation based on the other stuff you like. I'm happy to support however possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of the movie going experience, right, in the shared room in the dark,
Yeah.
in sitting in the dark room, Thunderbolts
Yeah.
has come out, and spoiler alert, although not really a spoiler alert because Marvel spoiled it already. The New Avengers,
Yeah.
as it's the title was a Thunderbolts with an asterisk, and then it got replaced with the New Avengers. So I went and saw it last Thursday. Have either of you had a chance to see it yet?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
I have not, but not due to a lack of trying. It's because I have a 4-year-old. I really want to see it, and I'm hoping to sneak away one of these weeknights. Even though, obviously we know the title change. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, obviously the MCU has been through a lot of kind of evolution since it sort of hit its peak. A lot of people would say with Endgame, right? Like the 10 years of MCU goodness kind of culminating in, Endgame and that epic theater experience, which, honestly the timing was, impeccable because it was the summer before a global pandemic.
Mhm.
Um, and so, we all got to have that shared experience, right, of seeing that in the theaters. And then since then, you know, I've definitely been, I've always, I have a lot of people who give me a hard time because I'm really optimistic about a lot of stuff. And so I try to see the positive in a lot of the media that I consume. And so I wouldn't necessarily throw the entire, phase 4, into the dumpster or anything. But there are a lot of people who feel that, the MCU has kind of like gone off track. Right. And so I guess my question, Alan, for you first, because this is kind of like how you engage with these characters and these IPs, and I think there are a lot of people kind of like in that same boat. Like, what are you hoping for with the Thunderbolts, and then also like with the movies that are movies and properties that are coming out in this phase? Like, what are you hoping to see more of in order to kind of maybe bring the MCU back to that feeling of euphoria we all had when we went and saw Endgame in the theater?
Honestly, like I don't have anything that I'm like, oh, I really hope they do this. Just make them good.
Yeah,
Good fun, just good action. That's it. Like it doesn't take much for me to have fun with like a comic book hero based type movie.
yeah, yeah. What about you, Greg? Like, are you kind of in the same boat in terms of what you've been feeling about the recent, Marvel properties? Like, have you been enjoying them more? Do you feel like there's opportunities here? And like, what are you hoping for from maybe, the new Avengers and then the properties that are the movies that are to come?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really curious to see, where they go from here with building up to Doomsday and then after Doomsday, because it feels like they have a really cool opportunity, especially after seeing the incredible response to Deadpool and Wolverine, which I think everyone kind of went into that hoping it was like set up for the future of the MCU when it was actually more of like a love letter to sending off, the 20th Century Fox X-Men verse, which is
Yeah,
funny
yeah,
because now, part two, some of those characters are coming back for Doomsday, and I'm very curious to see how that's utilized. But yeah, I mean, like, I'm excited for Thunderbolts. It's really a case by case basis on the project. I think Thunderbolts looks like a lot of fun, but it also presents an opportunity for the MCU to kind of potentially have a work in a more serious tone and deal with some heavier themes while also still delivering, the popcorn entertainment and the laughs along the way, which the MCU's done so well. And that's a big reason why it's been able to, really build such a big fan base, because Iron Man came out of the gate and surprised everyone by being a movie that had heart, and it had, spectacle, and it had, consistent levity. And I think that's a formula that worked really well for quite some time for the MCU. Um, but now, the pandemic certainly presented some very interesting challenges for the whole, entertainment industry, especially when it comes to, a certain percentage of the audience waiting for something to go to streaming or digital. Um, yeah, so I'm excited about Thunderbolts, and I'm curious about the future. Um,
Yeah.
I want to be optimistic, because I think that between this, Superman, and some other projects coming up, I want people to fall in love with comic book movies, because I want people to care about these characters and these
Right.
stories. And
Yeah.
my hope is that, if they keep caring about these characters and these stories, hopefully we can keep getting, a small percentage of the movie going audience, or the streaming audience, to eventually become interested enough and put a comic in their hand. So yeah, I'm genuinely excited to see Thunderbolts, even though I know it's called New Avengers. I'm sorry, you said that before, right? That it's called New Avengers.
Yeah. The spoiler alert that Marvel
Yeah.
kind of pivoted on the marketing for it, which is some folks are miffed about. They're like, hey, like, like, are you punishing us for not seeing it opening weekend and just like spoiling it? But other people, I think they think it's kind of unique that they're been like, oh, you thought you were gonna go see Thunderbolts? No, it's the New Avengers. Now go see the New Avengers, right?
I think it's a good strategy, because a movie like Thunderbolts, especially with, I mean, like the MCU when it first started, how many projects was there a year? It was like one or two movies a year, I think.
Yeah. It was a bit of a slower burn, especially after Iron Man. There was like a couple movies a year, maybe, once they kind of built out their
Yeah,
timeline.
yeah, and then with the pandemic, they tried to pivot to, make sure that, audiences could still be engaged with the MCU even if they couldn't go to theaters. And there were, now, at least over the last few years, there were multiple projects, and it was more so, it didn't feel as much like appointment viewing as opposed to like one part of a much, much bigger picture. And you didn't have to experience every step along the way, because now there were more steps and you could pick and choose based on your interests and genres and everything. And
Yeah.
Thunderbolts could kind of feel like that for some people. And
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
by calling it then the New Avengers for the second weekend, I think that signifies that this is more important for the MCU, that these characters are important, that they represent a big part of what's coming up with Doomsday. And that if you love the MCU and you want to get back in and you want to get excited for Doomsday, I think that's their way of saying you have to check this out. And if you missed
Yeah.
out opening weekend, hopefully this will motivate them to give it another look.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think that's part of it. And I had seen, related to Deadpool and Wolverine, I think Ryan Reynolds had said that one of the early strategies for that movie was actually to release it as like a buddy cop movie, like as a front. So they were gonna do like trailers and everything with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman for some other like unrelated movie, and they were gonna release it, and then like 5 minutes into the movie, they were gonna be like, "Just kidding, suckers! It's Deadpool and Wolverine," and like people were gonna lose their minds. I still would have loved. I would have loved if they actually executed on that. Because looking at it in hindsight, I'm like, oh no, that would have been brilliant. And so this is kind of like a version of that. I think they kind of evolved that. I'm like, okay, but like, what could we actually do? Okay, we can actually release and say, hey, it's Thunderbolts. Just kidding. Like, this is the New Avengers. Come check it out. I know we're running a little bit longer than usual, but I don't want to move away from this conversation without discussing. Kevin Feige said recently, it's Feige, right? Feige? I don't know. He said that the MCU can feel like homework. right? Especially now with so many different properties and IPs and things like that. And so I think it's interesting that the MCU is beginning to take on the the kind of the burden or the blocker that a lot of people feel getting into comics themselves, right? Greg, you kind of alluded to this earlier, where you encounter a lot of people who don't really want to get into comics. They're like, "Well, how am I going to get into Spider-Man? There's 800 issues. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm not gonna go back to 1964 and start reading, the last 60 years worth of comic books." And now it kind of feels that same way with the MCU, where it's like, okay, how do I get into the MCU now, and kind of pick up and get context for all of these different inside jokes and these different like major plot points. And so, how do you kind of get around that, right? Like, how do you begin to escape like everything that you've built? Because on the one hand, you want to say, yes, like we want to reward you, faithful fan that's been here since Iron Man, and seen everything, all the shows, everything else, but also to be able to say, okay, new people, new viewers, we want to bring you in as well. We want you to have a good time at the movies. So like, how do you balance those two things, right? Like, how do you square that circle?
Yeah. Do you think taking a look at Deadpool and Wolverine, do you actually think that's a good example of that? Because that a lot of it, to fully appreciate it requires pre-existing knowledge of, the Fantastic Four movies, which had Chris Evans,
Hmm.
as Johnny Storm. It had Jennifer Garner as Elektra. There's even a joke in there about, Ben Affleck as Daredevil.
Uh-huh.
But someone could
And
still,
then Blade, of course, Wesley Snipes Blade,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah.
But you could still go into that movie without having seen those things, and it's still, I would have to imagine, overall a very satisfying experience, even if some of the jokes, go over your head. I have to
Yeah.
imagine they have a similar approach. Like looking at Doomsday, it's going to be such a cast, and I think they know that a certain percentage of the audience will be, the fans who have done the dedicated viewing all the way since Iron Man. But there's also going to be a large amount of people who maybe they're, casual moviegoers who have seen some Marvel movies here and there, but they know this is a big pop culture thing. And at the end of the day, the product has to stand on its own, and it has to be a satisfying story experience for anyone to hop into. And that's that kind of similar with comic books, where you have the opportunity to tell, a 21-page story or something once a month, and you can't assume that someone has read decades worth of Spider-Man going into that. You can
Right.
have references and nods that show there's a respect for the continuity and the storytelling, and there are things that may go over some people's heads, but overall, it has to be able to stand on its own and pull someone in, make them enjoy that experience, and then want to see what's next. And
Yeah.
I mean, they're they're a very smart operation over there. Obviously, I know that, obviously Endgame was certainly a high point. I mean, objectively speaking, right? In terms of, box office and everything. But, they've taken a lot of big swings, especially to try to pivot with the pandemic. And I think over the past year or so, they've been pretty public with talking about how they were like reevaluating the strategy. And that's clear when you look at, how the slate has changed. And
Yeah.
I think,
They've definitely tightened it up, right? And
yeah.
that gives me hope, right? When I'm talking about like my own hopes for this new phase, it it really is like, I want more of that narrative cohesion, right? Because to Alan's earlier point, like, I don't think, I mean, there's not many people, right, that have the luxury of time, right?
Yeah.
I just do not, with every other hobby, all the other things that I'm doing, work, job,
Hmm.
family, right? Everything else, I just don't really have the time to invest in all the different MCU TV properties that they were putting out. And so when they began to kind of roll out this slate to say, okay, like we're going to do these movies, and then we're also going to do like 5 limited TV series that are like 8 to 12 episodes each, and they're all an hour, and like everything else, and how they all tie into each other. I'm like, yeah, I literally just like tuned out. I'm like, there's just no way. Like, I'm just going to be going into movies and not know what's going on, because like that's how I interact with the MCU. And so like the fact that they saw that and they were like, yeah, you know what? Like we went a little over the top, right? With the the media. And so now we're going to bring it back to these, more spaced out, kind of heavy hitting movies that are really driving that narrative forward. And that's what I'm really excited to see. And if Thunderbolts is any indication, honestly, I feel like we're definitely taking steps in the right direction. This movie is, I want you both to go and see it and really enjoy it. It is fantastic. I think you both are going to really enjoy it. So.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm excited, and it's similar to like if a comic book publisher, for example, was doing multiple big events a year, and every big event had like 25 tie-in issues. Like that's just too much for someone to pay attention to. Even if they can afford that, it's still a matter of, like you said, time. Like how
Yeah.
many other things are competing for your attention? How many other streaming shows are you watching? How many video games are you playing? How many podcasts are you listening to? How many movies are you watching? Like as much as we may love one specific thing, that's not the thing that defines most of us. I love Ninja Turtles. I'm not only watching Ninja Turtles media. After this podcast, I'm probably gonna go watch the finale, or the series finale to The Righteous Gemstones, and then the new episode of The Last of Us, and then maybe play a match of Overwatch or something.
Right. Yeah, and so, if you were like thinking, "Oh man, I need to, finish watching, I didn't catch up on She-Hulk and I got like 8 more hours of that to watch," or, whatever. And I know the Daredevil series is really good, but like, having all of that, right? Like that goes back to that point of like you don't want it to feel like homework. Like you have to know that your audience is engaging with your media in a certain way, and you want to be able to appeal to the way that they engage, right? And at what frequency and for what amount of time. And yeah, so when you make it more accessible for those folks to like just, sit down or go to the theater, see a movie, or if they miss it in the theaters, they just do a digital, streaming or download or whatever, and they watch it, and now they're caught up, right? So all very true. All right, last thing to discuss here. Since our last episode, the Switch 2 pre-order happened, and it was a god awful mess. It was such a mess.
Does it ever get this messy in the world of comic books?
Thankfully not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, right? Because I don't think there's ever been a comic release that's been like, oh, we're doing a limited release. It's going out to like midtown.com or whatever. And we're only going to have 1,000 copies go, there's some variations of that, like for, covers and things, but
yeah.
No, not really. You hardly ever see that. But yeah, so, various, it was Best Buy, it was Target, it was Walmart, and GameStop. Those were the kind of the major vendors, right, that carried the Switch 2 at launch for pre-order. And I, Best Buy was about 30 minutes late. Target, you couldn't check out. Walmart, the line system was kind of weird, wonky. And GameStop's website completely broke. Funny enough, like looking back at all the stories and everything, the most successful, streamlined, cleanest way to pre-order your console in the year of our Lord 2025 was actually to go to a physical GameStop and stand in a line, because each of the stores had a piece of paper on it that said, "Hey, we are going to be getting this many Switch pre-orders for the base console and this many for the console plus Mario Kart." Nobody was waiting in line at midnight. Like there were people who walked up to a line at like 8 a.m. and there were like 10 people in front of them, and they just stood there for a couple hours, and then they opened for pre-order and they're like, "Cool, here's $50. I'll come back for my Switch in June."
Did you see the saga of Snowbike Mike?
I did. I saw that he was he was like live streaming, and then he did go to the line at like midnight and there was like nobody there. Like it was pretty wild. From Kind of Funny, for folks who I think most of our listeners are familiar with the Kind of Funny folks. But yeah, Snowbike Bike is a special guy. Shout out
No,
to
I
Snowbike.
watched it live. It was incredible. And he got there, he's thinking there's going to be surely at least 30 or 40 people here. and I'm gonna hang out, make a bunch of new friends. And it was just like this one other guy, and that's it.
Yeah. There's just one dude. And like you're gonna be best buds with that guy for the next, 12 hours or whatever. And I remember going to like Target when the Wii came out, maybe the Wii U. And I remember like getting there at midnight, wanting to try and get a console for my sisters for Christmas. Um and they opened the doors and they were like, we don't have any. And everybody like in line was like, and they all turned and ran away. But it used to be like more of a thing, like those midnight releases and pre-orders. And now, it's all online, and all the online systems somehow, after how many console releases, like they still can't get their shit together. Like it's unbelievable. But anyways, Greg, I'm curious, you mentioned you have a 4-year-old son. Sounds like the perfect demographic for a Nintendo Switch. Are you getting a Switch too for the household, or are you do you have a console in the house?
Yeah, we have a Switch. We still have our GameCube because my wife and I just love the old school, Mario Kart and Mario Party games, and I still have like Resident Evil 4 and Incredible Hulk for it. I have a PlayStation 5, which I play pretty regularly. But no, we didn't. We were not part of the dash for Switch 2. I guess for us, it's more of a wait and see, just because that's a pretty big investment, frankly, for us at the moment.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you're talking about midnight releases, and those are some of my happiest memories, picking up games at midnight. I mean, like, I did that I remember in college, Halo 2, and I played it until I had class at 9 a.m., I think.
Nice.
Halo 3, the Legendary Edition, I still have the Master Chief helmet on my bookshelf and everything. And yeah, those were good times. And I mean, that's kind of like what we were talking about before with like going to movie theaters and comic shops, which is like the shared experience and the shared joy of being surrounded by people who love the same thing as you, versus an absurd amount of people trying to access a website all at the same time, and then it crashes due to significant demand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's yeah, so I mean I'm still amazed that again, and I know we don't really do a lot of those midnight releases anymore. And I was in line for the Halo 2 stuff, and my uncle and I actually were in line together to get it, and went back to my house, and we like ate pizza, had ice cream, and just played Halo 2 for like into the wee hours of the morning. And like kind of all those like cool experiences. And yeah, there were more people in line. Everybody was all kind of like excited about it, like, oh, what map are you going to play on? What are you hoping to do? But yeah, all that's gone, and now you're just fighting a bunch of digital ghosts online for digital scraps. Like, no, this is my Switch too.
We're waiting
Thankfully,
in quote unquote digital lines. Like that's crazy.
yeah, I know. It's just, I mean, Comic Con also. I mean, I did the Comic Con, or I was trying to get like a hotel room for Comic Con. That was a hot mess as usual this year, so I didn't get anything. But I did luck out with a Switch 2 pre-order via Best Buy, because I just happened to be on the Best Buy website. I had multiple apps open. I was just trying to like get on top of it, and then I refreshed the Best Buy page literally when it went live, and they were late. They were like 20 or 30 minutes late.
Nice.
So I refreshed, and it was there, and and I just hit add, got in the cart, and I was able to get it over the line. So meanwhile, in Target, I had it in my cart, and I tried to check out like so many times, and it was just like error, error, error. And I'm like, I don't want to take it out of my cart because I don't want to lose the inventory. Like it's still in there, but it just never panned out. And then Alan, I know you actually had a second chance at yours, right?
Yeah, Best Buy did not like me as much as it liked you. Like it had me in the digital line, and then after I think it was like 30 minutes, it finally like showed me my cart. But like it only showed up on my cart for like a split second. I just barely saw it out of the corner of my eye, and then the cart went empty, and then the only option was to go jump back into this god awful digital line. But obviously by then, like it was over. After a while, I just refreshed, checked the. I was like, it's sold out. I'm like, yeah, I know. I did get lucky though because it was like 2 or 3 nights later, after sort of like the mad rush. Walmart kind of had like a stealth drop of like inventory, and thanks to Wario 64 again, people's champ, I was able to sneak in into Walmart's digital line, and that one actually worked for me, and I managed to secure one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
May I
Uh,
ask, what is it about the Switch 2 that has you guys feeling like you need to get it right away? Like, what has you super excited about when you finally get it? Like, the game you're going to play first, and what is it about that experience that you're so optimistic about?
um, For me, it's Mario Kart World, which is going to
Mhm.
be one of the release titles for it. I definitely like the footage that I've been seeing and just kind of the more open world approach to Mario Kart, and kind of building out on the online like co-op play. Um, I think the Switch 2 is going to try to address some of the issues that the original Switch had in terms of making it better for like the online experience. So I'm really excited about that. And then also, most of the time when it comes to consoles, it's not even necessarily like the launch day games. It's more what I know is coming. And for me, that's Metroid Prime 4.
Mhm.
And so Metroid Prime is probably, one of my favorite games. The original trilogy is fantastic, but of course the original Metroid Prime, just absolutely stunning. And so I'm really excited for 4, and that'll come out basically in the fall. And I don't want, I'd rather have it now because I know if I don't get it now, I don't think they're going to be readily available until after holiday, right? And so, um, I don't want to miss out on the opportunity to be able to play Metroid Prime 4 at launch. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. But
Nice.
Alan,
Yeah,
what do you?
yeah, I'm also hyped for Mario Kart World. Like it's been a while. Like I know we had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but that's like which is a rehash of like the Wii U version. It's like this is the first new Mario Kart in like a while. Also, I'm excited to kind of go back and play some games with that will like work better. It really feels like this is what the Switch 2 like really should be, was meant to be all along, and that first gen Switch was very much like a proof of concept, underpowered and just like the best Nintendo could do given the situation, coming off that huge L that was the Wii U, and the available technology. So like the Switch 2 is bringing a lot of huge leaps in terms of technology. So to that, for me personally, it's exciting, and the quality of life stuff too, like the bigger display, the VRR capability, and also probably not the best move on my part, but like kind of concerned that this might be the cheapest it'll ever be. Like,
Mm.
could tariffs come down the pike and all of a sudden it's like $750 or $800, type of deal?
Yeah, trying to lock in the budget pricing. I mean, I don't know if it would jump
Yeah,
that
yeah.
much, but like even if it goes from 450 base to like a 550 base or 600 base, right? Like that can make it. And we're seeing that, right? Like Xbox came out and announced price increases. I'm sure that Sony won't be far behind. And that's such a unique, well, maybe not unique, but it's such an odd thing to be talking about. Like companies coming out and being like, "Oh, we're not making our consoles cheaper." Like has been the case in pretty much every video game generation before, where a couple years in the generation they're like, hey, let's just chop $50 off. Here's a streamlined version of the console you can get for a little bit cheaper.
Like
It's like,
usually
no.
$100. Like when we got these,
Yeah,
like the PlayStation 5 Slim. I know that Sony doesn't call it the PS5 Slim, but it basically is.
yeah,
Like every other generation, that's come with like $100 price cut, and this time it's like no, digital went up by 50, and then it kind of stayed the same, and then over on Xbox, everything went up about roughly $100.
yeah,
So yeah, and like because you just never know with the craziness of the tariffs, it's like this thing could end up the Switch 2 could end up just having to cost $700-800. You just don't know. So it's like I wish I didn't have to take that into consideration. But I just kind of felt like I had to.
yeah, for sure. But anyways, thank you again, Greg, for joining. We'll see how everything pans out with the Switch 2 and everything else. I hope you're able to get your hands on one. If you do decide that you want to try for one, might we suggest our good buddy Wario64, the People's Champion, as we call him. He's a really good one to follow on social media because he's constantly posting like when there's deals and stuff, and he also usually posts like when there's like a restock on on the Switch 2, for example, or on accessories, peripherals, etc. And so he's a great one to follow and have notifications turned on in case you're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe I'll try for a Switch 2. And if there's like a stealth drop like what Walmart did, you might look out.
Yeah, and he's on Blue Sky too, not just on the other site.
On the site that shall not be named, the former bird site. But anyways, thanks again, Gregg, so much for coming and chatting with us about your time at IDW and your insight and philosophy on engaging with press and comic fans and everything in between. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Thanks. Yeah, it was incredibly kind for you to invite me to chat about all that stuff. I really appreciate it, and yeah, just can't thank you enough for the invite. Had a really good time, and I look forward to us obviously continuing to talk more via email and other messages for all the other stuff. And I'm sure I'll see you at San Diego too. We'll definitely have to set up some stuff for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we will chat at San Diego for sure. And I've got some stuff headed your way related to other things that you've sent me over the last few days. So we will be in touch. But until next time, if you enjoyed this episode of GG Everybody, please be sure to hit follow, leave a review, share it with your fellow fans. And you can also reach out to us at contact@thegeeklygrind.com if you've got a topic you want us to discuss or a guest that you think that would be a good fit. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, may your rolls be natural 20s, your loot be legendary, and your save points never too far away. GG, everybody.
See ya.
Good game.